Hi everyone, my name is Sonia. I have an evil sister, Toni. We always didn't like each other. We couldn't be around each other for more than 20 minutes, especially in the same house. So my dad used to arrange dates with her separately and away from me or my mom. She was my half-sister from my father's first marriage. Maybe that's why she didn't like me so much. In general, I rarely saw her. She lived far away in the States, and we've been in Seoul, South Korea for years. We moved here when I was 10 years old. Since then, my father would fly to the States himself to see his daughter. It was better for everybody. As far as my mother and I knew, he provided for her well, paid for both school and out-of-pocket expenses. Toni didn't call us at all, just Dad. One day, I asked him to bring me a purse from the States, a kind I had wanted for a long time and I couldn't find in Seoul online stores. Dad told me he'd get it for me. It wasn't cheap, but it was a present for my graduation with honors. We agreed that I wouldn't ask for anything else. My mother and I waited for him. We made dinner, and Dad had been gone all week. He said there were unforeseen circumstances and told us he would be late. Out of impatience, I called him and asked where he was, and he said he was on his way from the airport. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw a surprise in front of me. "Toni? What the hell are you doing here?" "Move over, kid. Daddy, get the suitcases over here." I looked behind her to see my father carrying a dozen suitcases. My mother wasn't happy about it either, but she hid it well. She and Toni didn't have a great relationship either, but at least they kept it civil. That was enough. "Toni, hi, welcome. Nice to see you. Come on in." "Hi, thank you." "Dad, what's going on?" Dad came in. He could barely carry the bags and said that Toni was on vacation too and that she was going to spend it with our family. "What family? Is she coming here to visit someone else?" "Sonia, be nice." "Yes, daughter, she came to visit family. That is, us." "You mean you?" "Us," I said. "That's it. We'll unpack your suitcases later. Toni, our guest room is being renovated. You can stay in Sonia's room. She has a big one. I hope you'll be comfortable there." "What? In my room? She can't sleep in the living room, can she?" "I'm not happy to sleep in the same room as you either, listening to you grinding your teeth. And you snore." "That was when I was a kid." "That's it. I'll sleep in the living room. Sonia with Mom and Toni in Sonia's room. All right? I'm tired and hungry. I'll go wash my hands, and you sit down at the table." After Daddy shouted, everyone fell silent. We knew it wasn't going to be an easy period. Dinner passed in silence with only Mom and Dad talking. The next morning, my dad and Toni were getting ready to go out. I remembered about my present and asked my father about it, but he said apologetically that he had forgotten about it because he had too much to do in the USA. And then I saw the same purse in Toni's hands. "What? I wanted the same one. Is that mine?" "Are you shitting me? I bought this a month ago." "Dad, that's my present? She took it." "God, Sonia, calm down." I went back to my room angry and unhappy. "Yeah, I'm not going to last another couple of weeks," I said to myself. Then I went to the kitchen, but my mom was making some noise in there. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I think the house smells like gas." "No, it's from the neighbors. Remember last year they had trash in the drain? It smelled like gas all over the house. I'm sure it's the same case here." "Go check it out, please." "Okay." I went to the stairwell and walked toward the elevator. Then I noticed there was a receipt on the floor. What? What the hell? It's a receipt for my purse. My purse. According to the date, my father had bought it 3 days ago, and that bitch had stole it. Ugh, I hate her. I called my dad right away, wanting to throw a tantrum, but he dropped it. I ran home, furious, and ran to my room. My mom ran in after me. I started kicking Toni's suitcases over. "Daughter, what's wrong with you?" "I hate her! She took my present, my purse! Daddy gave it to her! How could she? How can he?" "Daughter, be understanding. She has no mother. She lives with her grandmother. Your father is the only parent she has left. Say thank you that she decided not to move in with us and just come on vacation." "Why wouldn't she? Dad provides for her." "You can't say that. She's his daughter, just like you, and he doesn't deprive you at all." "Yes, he does. He gave her my graduation present. When she comes home, you can talk to her. Maybe she can order the purse through someone to come here. My mom could barely calm me down. When Dad came home in the evening, I told him, and Toni just smiled. I threw myself on top of her, grabbing her by the hair. We could barely be separated. Dad was raging. Then he yelled, "That's it! I've had enough of this. I have 2 daughters and I love them both. Whether you like it or not, you'll have to live with it. In fact, if you want, we'll all live together. Understand?" "What? No way!" "Whatever I say, that's the way it's gonna be. Otherwise, you'll both lose your inheritance, your pocket money, and everything else. You're making a scene over a bag. I didn't have to buy it at all. It cost $4,000. I wish I hadn't bought it. Both of you think about your behavior. Your mother and I are going to a restaurant, and when we get back, both of you must make up. Otherwise, you'll be left without a cent. Got it?" We both puffed up our cheeks and mumbled, "Clear." They left. Me and that bitch Toni were left alone. I knew things were about to get heated, and I wanted to get out, but she pulled my hair. "Ah! What? Did you think I was just going to let you get away with that? Let go! You're hurting me!" But Toni wouldn't listen to me. She pulled and pulled my hair. I had no choice but to kick her in the knee. "Ah! Shit! No swearing! Bitch! I hate you! It's mutual, trust me. You stole my father! And you stole my purse! But you stole my father! And you stole my purse! I wish you didn't exist! And you! Bastard! You're the bastard!" Toni ran after me, and I ran from her into the kitchen. I tried to hide behind the table, and we chased each other like crazy. Then I stopped abruptly. "Toni, stop! Distracting me?" "No, gas." "What gas?" "It smells like gas. It's obviously not garbage." "What gas? What garbage? What are you talking about?" "I think there's a gas leak in the house." We went to check the stove, and the smell seemed to intensify. I asked Toni to call 911, and while she did, I went upstairs to the neighbors, but they weren't home. I came back and told Toni that we had to open all the windows and go outside. "I have to call my parents." "Okay, I opened the windows. Now what?" "The main thing is to go out quietly, otherwise something will blow up." Just as I said this, I accidentally knocked the kitchen lighter off the table and it fell to the floor. Toni and I looked at it with bated breath, and suddenly a spark bounced off it. We looked at each other and ran out of the house and into the entryway. Boom! We were lucky in that most of it was weathered out. However, there was still an explosion. The stove exploded and the fire alarm went off. We managed to get out unscathed, only to be badly frightened. After a while, the rescuers, firemen, and our parents arrived. My dad and mom were so scared for us. They were both crying. It was Toni who opened the windows and doors in time. And Sonia was the first one to notice the leak.
"Thank God you're all right." "Girls, we were so scared." "I wouldn't have survived if something had happened to you."
"Really? Either of us?"
"You're both my daughters, and I love you both equally."
We all hugged each other. We called a repairman and had it fixed in a week. During that time, we lived in the living room and shared not just a room with Toni, but an entire bed. During that time, we got along pretty well. Before she left, Toni thanked my mother and I for everything, and then held out my purse. "It's yours. I'm sorry, I should never have done that." "Take it. It'll be a present from your father, and I'll order another one." "Thank you, sis." I hugged her and we said goodbye. Since then, our conflict was resolved, and my father's heart has been at peace. So has mine. I was even sorry she was leaving so soon. After all, we had just started getting along. But that's okay. In 3 months' time, school will be over, and then I'll go visit Toni in the States. She's promised to go shopping with me.
My name is Gloria, and I have been the only and most beloved child for most of my conscious life. Do you know how great it is to be the only one? This is when all attention is focused only on you, when everything is delicious, only to you, when you are taken to your grandmother, where you are waiting for goodies, cartoons, new toys, and sometimes pocket money, and everything is done for you. When my parents got married, they worked hard to buy their dream house as soon as possible. The years flew by, and they were all saving up money. Finally, this happy moment had to come. They were able to acquire housing. My mother told me how euphoric they were flying with my father, because having a roof over your head is a fairy tale. Well, then it dawned on them that it was time to have children, and then the problem started. In short, my mother could not get pregnant for a long time, so she was forced to undergo several different courses of treatment together with my father. It is good that they supported each other, did not retreat, and did not fight for happiness. As a result, after a few pounds of medication, my mother was diagnosed with infertility. She and Dad weren't ready for this, although it's unlikely that anyone will be ready for this at all. Their hands dropped, my father began to drink, my mother closed in on herself. It was as if their home had become a storehouse of grief and tears, rather than the happy moments they had planned. And then, when their marriage almost broke up, my mother's mother came and threw up the idea to adopt a baby. It became something of a second wind for my parents. They seriously thought about it, began to study the issue and collect documents. They didn't care if it was a boy or a girl, but a child. On that exciting day, when they came to watch the children, a barefoot, dirty girl ran out of the orphanage, grabbed both of them by the hands, shouted, "Mom, let's go home!" And my parents' hearts fell in love. It was me, the little girl who met them on the doorstep. My parents vowed to tell me the truth about who I was and where I came from. I still don't know my birth mother, and I don't really want to, because I've really had a good time with them all these years. I received as much warmth, care, and affection as many children from the orphanage did not receive. So we can safely say that I had a happy childhood. Definitely. And then one day, when I came home from school, I found my parents at home. They were sitting in the kitchen whispering, Dad hugging Mom tight, both of them crying and smiling. I didn't understand what was going on. When they saw me, they called me to them, hugged me tightly, and said, "Honey, you're going to have a little brother or sister." They probably expected a different reaction, but I wasn't happy about the news. I immediately imagined the whole nightmare waiting for me. Of course, this is great news for my parents, and maybe if I wasn't adopted, it would have been great news for me too. But no, not for the girl from the orphanage. Not for her. I knew perfectly well that my own child is my own, and I will always remain a stranger. And when the baby is born, they will understand the difference in us. They will feel that this baby is more native to them, which means that I am no longer needed. Will I be returned to the orphanage again? I asked with a terrible voice. My parents protested. Of course, they called it stupid and said that I was their own child. But I understood that it only took time. As the months passed, my mother's belly grew rounder and bigger. Along with it, my anxiety grew in my heart. I stopped being that carefree, cheerful girl, stopped kissing and hugging my parents. I didn't go near my mother's stomach. I didn't listen to it, I didn't talk to it, and I didn't want to touch it at all, because there was a person growing up who would get me out of the house. I knew it and waited. Well, then something happened that should have happened. My father took my mother to the hospital. I was sent to my grandparents. I waited for several annoying hours until finally my father called and said, "Girl, I heard how happy grandfather and grandma were, how they congratulated them, each other, and then they came to kiss me. But I pulled away, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried there for 20 minutes. The next day, my father came to pick me up and said we were going to see my little sister. He reacted to my denials with laughter, translated everything into a joke, then put me in the car and drove away. As soon as I crossed the threshold of the hospital, I was handed an ugly bouquet of flowers, and then my mother came out with a pink envelope in her hands. When she saw me, she began to smile, ran up to me, gave my father's envelope, and began to hug me. I missed her very much, and I was worried, and I only realized it when I hugged her. My eyes filled with tears. And then my father held up the pink envelope in which the little red ball was sleeping with its eyes closed. "Her name is Eliza," my father said. "This is your little sister," he added. The words made me want to throw up. The longer I looked at it, the more I realized that it was the essence of my end, or rather, the end of their love for me. We arrived home, where the four of us stayed, and against our background, I noticed how scrupulous my parents are about every sneeze. They kept running after her. My mother spent 24 hours with her 7 days a week. My father worked, and in the evenings barely had time to eat, take a shower, play with a baby, and passed out. There was no time for me. I belonged to myself, and this thought lived in my head along with a feeling of hatred for my sister. The more she grew, the more my loneliness grew. Looking at my mother's phone, her entire photo gallery was filled with photos of her and mine. Once, twice, and not enough. In general, the first year of Eliza's life was the worst in my life, even worse than in the orphanage, and I told myself that I can't take it anymore. I wrote a note, left it on the table, packed my things, and left the house. My parents thought I went to school as usual, and they didn't even ask me why I had such a big bag. I knew that there was no more room in their hearts for me. That day, I walked where I had to, turned off the phone, and ran around the city. When it got dark, I found a rotten motel, wandered there, and began to think about how to continue to live. Because I did not want to go back to the orphanage, I spent the night there, if you can say so, because I didn't sleep. I didn't eat most of the day, and there was a lump of resentment and unspoken words in my throat. The next morning, I decided to go to a nearby city to get a little lost. I needed to find some work and a permanent bed. But when I was buying tickets, a woman looked at me askance, and a minute later, a policeman came up to me. At the sight of him, I ran towards the subway. I ran as fast as I could, but they caught up with me and grabbed my bag. An angry employee immediately put me in the car and drove me to the police station, where my parents and Eliza rushed in an hour later. I was sitting on the bench, crying, and my mom and dad were saying in both ears that I was a stupid girl. They took me home, interrogated me. My father was mad. My mother was either crying or yelling. It's not clear at all. Then Eliza came up to me with hesitant steps. In the middle of all this fuss, her footsteps seemed so soft. She came clumsily up to me as I sat on the floor, put her arms around my face, and said, "Gloria!" My name! She called my name. Her first word was my name. Gloria. Oh my God, you have no idea how I felt at that moment. My heart sank. My parents fell silent, and I suddenly put my arms around her, and for the first time in her tiny life, I kissed her. Something had changed in me, and I couldn't hate her. My Eliza. Another year has passed since then, and I discussed old grievances with my mom and dad, and I realized that I am still as important to them as before, only now there are more of us in their lives.